And our last presentation in the session is from Sorcha Edwards, who's the Secretary General of Housing Europe. Sorcha.
Thank you very much. Very happy to be here. As was mentioned by Francis, this is almost the end of the Erin project, but it's really the beginning of what we hope will become something much bigger. And the tool that I'm going to present is one that really illustrates that we can already start to envisage a bigger future for this initiative. And it's what has been called the CSR Code of Conduct, and you will find it in your folders if you want to take a look. And this has been put together over the 18 months of the project, and I think it's really a worthwhile document. So before we go on to the awards, to take a few minutes to see what's inside. So Housing Europe, as you know, represents the social cooperative and public housing federations all over the European Union. So there's 46 regional and national federations, and they represent about 12% of the housing residential stock in the EU. So it's quite a considerable weight. So if we can really vouch for a responsible future for that 12%, I think we can really set a good example. And what Housing Europe is generally working towards, we're very much looking at focusing on the big picture, on what we talked about a little bit this morning, the regulatory framework at national level, the regulatory framework at city level, at regional level. And of course that has to be right. But what's really inspiring about this code of conduct and the fact that there's already many organisations who have expressed an interest in signing up is that those local organisations are not waiting around for the perfect regulatory framework. No, they're getting on with their work as best they can, despite some in difficult situations, and this is why this can be a really great guidance. So, the main principles, you've heard many of them being mentioned already. I think it's quite significant that the organisations involved have managed to come up with that, with the agreement on these different themes. And I think it's worth just going back again to that significance, the fact that we have the tenants together with the landlords, with the support of the other stakeholders, have come together to agree on this. It is quite, if you think about it, it's quite significant. I mean, we can imagine that in the everyday basis there are difficulties, but we can see that that they've come together and the vision is a joint one. So one of the issues that they've identified as being centrally important, one of the themes, is economic responsibility and sustainability. This is increasingly, and we hear it more and more, increasingly important is in today's budgetary setting of this kind of continuous push of being efficient, being effective, doing more with less. And we can see that the organisations are ready to illustrate how they are being economically responsible and working on a sustainable level. So just to go through the points, because I think it's worth it, the points that are being covered. So they are talking about investing sustainably, ensuring cost effectiveness and balanced level of service provided. And keeping in mind that it's not just about the rent, the housing, it's about all of the services that go along with that. What we've heard this morning is there's not much point in giving a key to affordable house if you're giving the key to, let's say, fuel poverty, or a key to an area where transport is hugely expensive. So it's not just about the housing, it's about keeping all the associated services living in that house affordable and manageable. It's about working together with tenants. And this we've also heard a lot about today, the difficulties that this is wrought with in many situations. But the intention is there. It's about also the bigger picture. So you are economically sustainable at the organisational level, but what is the impact of having affordable housing in the bigger picture? We can see that it is contributing to a more balanced housing market and more affordability in the other housing sectors. So this is particularly obvious in what we heard about today from Vienna, where the proportions are very big, but not so much in other countries. But this is something really important when we see house price trends, especially in our capital. This contribution to the overall affordability on the housing market, it cannot be underestimated. And the last point, it's not only about the money that is charged to tenants living in the homes, but it's about the money that is spent. So it's how it's spent. And there we touch upon responsible procurement practices. It was mentioned earlier by Charlotte. The money that's spent by the local organisation should be used to promote local businesses, to encourage sustainable growth in the local community. So this was another issue that was pointed out. Then, looking at the local social sustainability. So obviously there are many overlaps, because obviously the affordability and the social sustainability go hand in hand. But this is another theme that has been identified. And here is where many housing organisations, we've heard about it, going beyond the walls of the building, but looking again to the people living in the homes, but also the neighbourhoods. So it's not keeping just the vision of just the bricks, the mortar, the building, but looking at the people and the neighbourhoods. And we heard this morning about thriving neighbourhoods. So we also we heard about affordability, then ensuring security of tenure. This was also mentioned by a representative from Vienna. How to ensure empowerment of tenants is to start with the secure living environment. So, and the security of tenure. So this was a point that came through. Then, in terms of, again, social sustainability, it's working with other stakeholders. What housing organisations cannot do, they may want to in some cases, but they cannot do everything alone. So it's about networking, it's about working with local authorities and collaborating. Environmental sustainability. Again, it's a topic that has come up through the energy debate 3 or 4 times, and you can see that it's a really hot topic. As we heard, it's on the tip of the tongue because of climate change, because of the urgency of the need to reduce our energy consumption. It is on the tip of the tongue of all policymakers at many different levels. But we and the tenants and the housing organisations are the ones who are dealing with trying to transform those very worthy goals into action on the ground and trying to make it affordable. So this is an issue that came through very, very strongly. And it's not only about reducing energy consumption. It's about all of the other materials that are used in the construction of buildings. So it's about the carbon footprint of the entire process of the construction, of the demolition. So it's looking at the carbon footprint of the whole process, which is very challenging, but again, the intention is there. Again, coming back to this good governance, fair relations with stakeholders. Housing organisations, and we've seen it today, they see themselves very much as the organisations who know the needs of the tenants, who know what's going on the ground, but cannot do everything. So they see themselves, I've heard the term this morning, bridge builders. So linking up with organisations, linking up with other services that are going on. So this idea of stakeholders is really, really cannot be underestimated. And again, we talk here about cooperation with local authorities, but also other stakeholders. So we heard this morning from Amsterdam. It's not only with tenants' organisations, but to be open with, to adapt to the needs on the ground, to be open to work with different types of NGOs and organisations. And the last point there, ensure accountability, which is clear. Then the last theme that was pointed out, so responsible human resources management. So again, it's not to be only talking about what is done, but how it's done, and that also means internally. So internally, how the organisation itself is managed, that they are fair employers, that do not discriminate and give equal opportunities, and provide a safe working environment. So I think I've covered all of the points, and I'm sure you're all getting very, very curious to hear what's coming up later in the awards. Thank you very much.